What is the most dangerous thing you can think of? A bomb? A hurricane? A wildfire? What about a balloon? It sounds ridiculous. A latex balloon is harmless. It's for birthday parties. It's for kids. But what if you take 1.5 million of them, fill them with helium, and release them all at the exact same second in the middle of a crowded city? On September 27, 1986, the city of Cleveland, Ohio, decided to find out. They wanted to create a spectacle. They wanted to be famous. And they succeeded. But not in the way they planned. Within hours, the sky turned into a choking plastic cloud. Airports were shut down. Horses panicked. And tragically, 2 fishermen vanished into a colorful sea of death while the Coast Guard watched helplessly, unable to tell the difference between a human head and a floating ball. This is the story of BalloonFest '86, the day a city accidentally bombed itself with happiness. This story is visual, tragic, and absolutely insane. Hit that like button if you think this was a bad idea, and let's watch it unfold. Chapter 1. The Mistake on the Lake. To understand why this happened, you have to understand Cleveland in the 1980s. The city was the punchline of every joke in America. They called it the mistake on the lake. The river had caught fire, literally. Their sports teams were losing, and the economy was crashing. Cleveland was desperate for a win. They needed a PR stunt to show the world, hey, we are a cool, vibrant city. The United Way, a massive charity organization, came up with an idea. Disneyland had held the world record for the most balloons released at once. Cleveland decided, we are going to crush that record. They planned to release 2 million balloons from the public square in downtown Cleveland. It was going to be beautiful. It was going to be on the news. Chapter 2. The Setup. The logistics were a nightmare. For 6 months they prepared. They built a massive structure, a rectangular bin the size of a city block, right in the middle of the public square. Over the top of this bin, they wove a gigantic, single-piece net mesh to hold the balloons down until the big moment. Then came the volunteers. 2,500 students and housewives spent days doing one thing: inflating balloons. Their fingers were taped up to prevent blisters. The air was filled with the hissing sound of helium tanks. One by one, they filled 1.4 million latex balloons: yellow, orange, blue, white. It was mesmerizing. As the bin filled up, it looked like a giant, multicolored monster growing in the heart of the city. The structure ballooned upwards, straining against the net. Chapter 3. The Weather Warning. September 27th, 1986. Race Day. The city was buzzing. 100,000 people gathered in the streets looking up. It was a carnival atmosphere. But there was a problem. Meteorologists reported a cold front moving in. Rain and wind were coming. The organizers had a choice: delay the launch and disappoint 100,000 people, or launch early. They chose to launch early. At 1:50 p.m., the organizers gave the signal: release the balloons. Chapter 4. The Release. A team of workers released the giant net. In 1 second, 1.4 million balloons shot upwards. It was undeniably breathtaking. It looked like a nuclear explosion of Skittles. The massive column of color rose up and wrapped around the terminal skyscraper. For a few minutes, it was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever seen. The crowd cheered. The cameras rolled. Cleveland had done it. They broke the world record. But then, physics happened. Chapter 5. What goes up? Usually, when you release a helium balloon, it goes high up into the atmosphere, expands, and pops, or it floats away for hundreds of miles. But remember that cold front? As the massive cloud of 1.5 million balloons rose up, it hit the cold air and the rain. Cold air makes helium contract, shrink. The rain made the balloons heavy. Instead of rising and popping, the balloons stalled. They stopped going up. And then they started coming down. They didn't pop. They remained fully inflated spheres. Imagine 1.5 million plastic balls raining down on a city. Chapter 6. The chaos begins. The wind pushed the massive cloud of balloons back down toward the ground. The airport. The balloons drifted over Burke Lakefront Airport. The runway was suddenly covered in bouncing, colorful orbs. Pilots couldn't see the tarmac. The airport had to be shut down immediately. The roads. Drivers on the highways suddenly found themselves driving through a blizzard of balloons. People swerved to avoid them. Accidents started happening. The beautiful spectacle was turning into a blinding fog. But the worst part was happening at a nearby horse farm. A prize Arabian horse named Minstrel was grazing peacefully. Suddenly, thousands of balloons began raining down on her. The popping sounds and the sheer number of objects terrified the animal. She panicked, ran into a fence, and severely injured herself. The owner would later sue for $100,000. However, a much darker tragedy was unfolding on Lake Erie. Chapter 7. The Fisherman. Earlier that day, two men, Raymond Broderick and Bernard Solzer, had gone out fishing on Lake Erie. They were just regular guys looking for a relaxing Saturday. But as the weather turned bad and the balloon launch happened, their small 16-foot boat capsized. They were thrown into the freezing water. They had no life jackets on. They were treading water, fighting to stay afloat, waiting for help. Their families realized they were missing and called the Coast Guard. "My husband is out there. Please find him." The Coast Guard crew ran to their helicopter. This is usually a standard rescue mission. You fly out, spot the heads bobbing in the water, and pull them up. But as the Coast Guard pilot tried to take off, he realized the sky was solid plastic. Chapter 8. The Sea of Spheres. The Coast Guard helicopter pilot looked down at Lake Erie and couldn't believe his eyes. Usually, Lake Erie is a flat sheet of gray or blue water. If there is a person floating in it, their head is a dark dot against the water. It's easy to spot. But on this afternoon, the lake looked like a giant ball pit. Millions of balloons had landed on the water. They were bobbing up and down with the waves. There were white balloons, orange balloons, and blue balloons. From the air, a human head bobbing in the water looks exactly like a balloon. The Coast Guard search and rescue team was helpless. They were looking for two needles in a haystack, but the haystack was made of millions of decoys. "We can't see anything," the pilot radioed back. "It's just balloons everywhere." They tried to use their searchlights, but the reflection off the wet latex made it blinding. They tried to fly lower, but the balloons were getting sucked into the helicopter rotors, threatening to crash the aircraft. For hours, Raymond Broderick and Bernard Solzer struggled in the freezing water, surrounded by the colorful debris of a city's celebration. The Coast Guard was right above them, but couldn't see them. Eventually, the search had to be suspended due to darkness and the sheer impossibility of the task. Chapter 9. The Tragic Discovery. The next morning, the balloons began to deflate or wash ashore. The beaches of northeast Ohio were covered in a thick layer of rubber waste. 3 days later, the body of Raymond Broderick washed ashore. A short time later, Bernard Solzer's body was found. They had drowned. It was a PR nightmare. The event that was supposed to make Cleveland look fun and safe had directly interfered with a rescue mission and arguably cost two men their lives. The the wife of one of the fishermen sued the United Way and the city of Cleveland for $3.2 million. She argued that if the balloons hadn't been there, the Coast Guard would have spotted them instantly. She settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. Chapter 11. The Cleanup. The cleanup took weeks. Balloons were found in gutters, clogging storm drains, and stuck in trees for months. The latex was supposed to be biodegradable, but it turns out that takes years. In the meantime, birds and fish ate the rubber and died. The event cost the city millions in lawsuits and cleanup fees, far more than the publicity was worth. Chapter 12. The Legacy. BalloonFest '86 did achieve one thing. It broke the world record. Guinness World Records certified the release of 1,429,643 balloons. Cleveland held the title. But Guinness looked at the disaster, the dead fishermen, the injured horse, the pollution, and made a decision. They realized that encouraging cities to release giant clouds of trash into the sky was a bad idea. Guinness World Records retired the category. They no longer accept records for mass balloon releases due to environmental concerns. So Cleveland holds a record that can never be broken, because no one is stupid enough to try it again. BalloonFest '86 remains a perfect example of good intentions, bad execution. They wanted to bring joy. They wanted to fix the city's image, but they forgot that nature doesn't care about your party. Gravity always wins. Those 1.5 million balloons looked beautiful for about 5 minutes, but the price of those 5 minutes were 2 human lives and an environmental disaster. It serves as a grim reminder. Just because you can do something big doesn't mean you should. I want to know your thoughts. Was this an honest mistake, or was it negligence? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story of the sky turning to plastic, please hit that like button. Subscribe and ring the bell, because next week we are diving into the story of a man who tried to build his own nuclear reactor in his mom's backyard. Thanks for watching.